Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Outlander Season 1 Episode 5. It is called Rent. So full spoilers for the episode as always. And the last episode set up that this was going to be them on the road, Claire going with them to collect from the various villages and towns and whatever that are under the Mackenzie clan. So that's very much what it is. I thought this episode did some smart little arcs, especially when I look, because we were ready to record this last week. We had to push it for various reasons, and I went back to check on it, and I was kind of like reminding myself, I was like, oh yeah, there's actually a lot of really neat little arcs in this episode. In terms of I don't think it feels. I think when you look at the plot of this episode, it doesn't look that special at face value, but when you stop and think about kind of like some of the character stuff, things that it does by the end, it's got a lot going on under the hood, I think.
Yeah, I think this is quite a smart episode.
Yeah, it's because I would say that Claire, up until now, obviously she's been out of place, and she's in the shock of like the outrageous thing that's happened to her, and she's been thinking about escape. But this is kind of the first one that's kind of dealt with her feeling like she doesn't belong in some way.
Yeah, you could probably say she's kind of just been in denial up till this point, more or less.
Yeah, whereas now the actual, like, them having their jokes and talking in a different language and kind of excluding her from things intentionally is actually starting to like hurt her, or get at her. It's starting to sort of weigh on her a little bit.
Yeah.
So you've got all that at play, and you've got maybe some larger scope things about some of the characters that this episode kind of reveals as well, which we'll get into.
Most importantly of all, proof that not all of the English are awful.
What English is not awful in this?
Yeah, the soldier who kind of steps in to defend Claire.
I don't know. He seemed pretty evil by the end. The way he came in, he's got a very punchable face.
No, he does, and that's maybe partially your bias as well. I'm going to throw that out there.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It definitely plays as he's doing, objectively speaking, the right thing.
Yeah, the first time you see him, sure. It felt when he shows up with an entire like squad at the end of redcoats, it feels a bit more.
You could argue that it is petty, right? And it is playing as it's a show of force. It's like, hey, look at us English. You could argue it that way.
Yeah, this is less about I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not saying it is for sure, but you could argue it's less about doing the right thing because this woman might be in need of help, and more about
it's an excuse.
More specifically that he feels embarrassed because when he tried to talk to her earlier, like they all kind of like gang up on him, and he feels like, oh, I need to show how big my dick is now, so he's got to. That's
possible. Yeah.
Roll back in.
Yeah, like I say, it's that, or it's an excuse to, hey, let's go get those Scottish bricks. Like, that's possible again, but on surface value, he is there to check that the woman's not been kidnapped.
I bet he's evil. I bet they're going to reveal
he probably is.
He's a vindictive little shit.
Yeah, he probably is.
By the way, I just found out that the lead actress in this is Irish.
Huh.
Which, admittedly, our last name is Balfe, which does look Irish. Yeah. So I guess I should have noticed that and thought about it. But that's funny. It's funny to me that she's possibly doing an accent. I mean, maybe she's not. Maybe she grew up in England, but
yeah, it's pretty common.
Yeah, but there's a chance that she's actually got an Irish accent in reality and is putting on the English accent.
Yeah, that'd be kind of weird. I'm sure there's probably a bunch of the Scottish ones who are putting on accents as well. There must be a couple of them at least.
I imagine some of the smaller ones are, because we did check a lot of the main ones, and a lot of the main ones are Scottish actors, but yeah, I imagine some of the bit parts in the background. That said, though, they do shoot it in Scotland, so maybe it's actually easy to get a lot of Scottish actors for the bit parts.
That's true, yeah.
Maybe, if anything, there's maybe a higher count of Scottish people doing English accents than there is the other way around.
I'll tell you one, because I remembered recognising it and I forgot to bring it up. Mrs. Fitz.
Oh, is she English?
I'm pretty sure she's the pub landlady in Ted Lasso.
Ah, now you've said it, I can see it. Maybe she is.
Arguably, it's possible she's putting an accent for that. I've not seen her in loads of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think of, but maybe.
I would say that her English accent sounded more authentic to my ears, but I mean, that could just be.
The thing is, her English accent that she was doing in that was very much kind of stereotypical Cockney, kind of playing it up, kind of being that hard landlady role. So it sounded authentic for that, but it's also very possible that's one of the most common ones that people, make up and put on. So
yeah. Either way, she's doing a decent job, whatever one she's faking, I suppose.
Yeah. Either way, it wasn't distracting.
Yeah. So no, I just thought it was an interesting little note. We spent so much time in episode 1 checking the validity of a lot of Scottish actors, and didn't bother checking to see if the English actress was actually English, and turns out she's not.
Yeah. Typical.
But yeah, so now there's some smart things in this, where Claire kind of goes through this little phase of feeling left out, and she kind of befriends the lawyer dude, Ned, who we kind of get to know a bit more this episode. Also kind of does a makeshift inhaler for his asthma, because she realizes that's what he's got.
Yeah, there's something in this particular area they're going through that triggers his asthma.
Yeah. And she kind of like clocks it and fixes it. But they kind of bond a little bit over the course of the episode. But otherwise, though, she feels very left out. She feels very like they're all making these dirty jokes with each other. There's a lot of bragging from the others about all their sexual escapades, all of which sound fake. But that is very much what they're doing. And she feels more isolated. There's a brief sort of diversion in the episode where she kind of like befriends some of the women at one of the towns and ends up helping them wash some stuff with piss. I can't remember exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, they were like treating the cloth.
Yeah. I revisited the episode just before we came out to record. My actual viewing was almost a week ago, so I'm forgetting the exact detail of what they were doing with this fabric. But I just know there was piss involved. But they were bonding. They were getting into
a very useful substance.
Yeah, but Angus comes in and is pissed at her. No pun intended. And grabs her and he yanks her back, and grills her out for it. And she's been drinking with the girls, so she's a little bit drunk. Which actually, there's a couple of lines in this episode that popped me and made me laugh quite a bit. And the first one is not even, I think, meant to be that funny a line, but it just, for some reason, it really made me laugh, is because one of the things that they've given for rent, because some of them are given money or gold or whatever it is, but some of them are giving them animals, goats, chickens, that kind of thing. And one of the family, she heard, oh, it's a shame we had to give that goat up because we kind of need it for the baby, for the milk. And she unties the goat, and it's which one is it? It's Rupert, I think his name is. Goes over and says, "You'll be getting me that goat." For some reason, that really made me laugh.
Yeah, I don't think that was intentionally funny.
There was something just about him fighting with her with the cord and just be like, "You'll be getting me that goat." Just really made me laugh. But this is kind of the height of her kind of like sort of lashing out against him. Well, not even the height, because later on she outright accuses Dougal of being a thief, and we'll get into all that in a minute. But it really does a job here in the first half of the episode of separating her from the group. And obviously, yeah, Jamie's still nice to her, and Jamie kind of diffuses a couple of situations and whatever. But at large, she feels very separate from everyone. And this is kind of one of the big first signposts of that. And then she sees that later that night, Dougal collects more money from them, but this time it's like away from the official table. It's not the actual collection,
and it's not like a set amount. It's like he's going for like donations.
Yeah, and he rips off Jamie's shirt to show all the scars in his back, for sympathy as to why they should donate. And Claire reads this quite maliciously as this is him lining his own pocketbook and using Jamie as kind of a sales tactic. So
I get where she's coming from, but also that seemed like a strange leap to me, given that it always felt like this like almost like a preacher, right, going for the donations, with this speech that he was given. It didn't feel like it was just this is the real half of your rent now, which is kind of what she comes to.
Yeah, I think it worked out well enough for me in the sense that I think the episode did a good job of giving me very different tones, because the tone in this scene where he does it versus the because we see him do it like 3 times effectively over the course of the episode, not counting the montage. And the first time it's like this, and it's got a sinister tone in the way she looks at Dougal afterwards and refuses to mend the shirt. Although notably she's willing to give in because he says, okay, well, Jamie won't have a shirt then, and she's willing to give in because she actually respects and likes Jamie. But The second time, it's when she hears like something in the Gaelic, because all these speeches are in Gaelic, which is why she's not really understanding and making some leaps as to what they're actually doing. And she recognizes the name, and obviously the realization she has, and we get like a flashback to her talking to her husband about this part of history, which is that Dougal's not a thief. He's not just, this is not like a criminal, just try to raise money for his own ends. He's actually raising money for an army because he wants to rebel and get the rightful king back in place. And we find out about this battle that sadly, and this is kind of a large scope thing for the show, I think at this point, is that they're raising money for this battle to build an army of I think we hear later 2,000, at least 2,000 die anyway, we hear, that are going to be in this battle that they have no chance in. They're going to get completely destroyed very quickly. So Claire has this realization that what Dougal's doing, at least to Dougal, I don't know enough about the politics of the time to necessarily have a side here, but he thinks he's doing something honorable, and he believes in what he's doing, and the others around him believe in what he's doing, and so she kind of starts to sympathize with what this is a bit more after she sees this, and this comes right after she's seen him like give some food to a family, and she's sort of cynical about it and says, "Oh, you're going to look merciful just now so that you get more money later. You'll look like the good guy." But the tone that changes from the first time you see it to the third time you see it, which is after they found the dead Scotsmen that are up in the, they're put up in the crosses and sort of put on display as a sign for being traitors from the English. Just the way the different music, the way the speech is delivered, it's got a sort of more kind of sad, patriotic, kind of like hopefulness to it.
Yeah, see, this is where I'm like conflicted on this, because I think the episode does a good job of conveying to us this different tone. But this is why I'm questioning Claire jumping to that when, the first one, the big key moment of that is, look at Jamie's scars. This is why you should donate, right?
Yeah, which in hindsight makes more sense once you understand this is about fighting the English.
And that's why I feel like it was weird that she didn't put that together, because she knows where he got those scars. She knows that story. She just got told it like a couple episodes ago. It was recent. It seems like she should be putting that together. Even if she's not understanding the language, even to me, I thought that was a fairly obvious link in me at the start.
I mean, maybe it's just a contrivance to make us follow along with her, so that we follow the right tone as we're going. I could maybe play devil's advocate and say that this could be a sign of her bias, because right now she's not particularly fond of Dougal and the control they have. So she's looking for the worst possible answer, effectively, because she wants to see the worst in him, and is then kind of confronted with the truth later on. It's like, oh shit, I actually not only kind of respect what he's doing, but feel kind of sad because I know it's doomed, and I know that him and all of his loyal followers are probably going to be dead in just a couple of years' time. I thought that was kind of neatly portrayed, and kind of her change of how she looked at it. Because there's that neat thing where she tries to warn Ned, the bookkeeper, and kind of says, "Hey, this is all kind of doomed. Like, maybe it's better not to do this because otherwise you're all going to die." And he conveys that to Dougal, obviously, which is why Dougal comes to talk to her at the end. But he goes a bit colder with her when she, because it's like, if she is a spy, the idea that she's put this together is actually quite suspect. Like, hey, you've put together some of our big plans, which actually would get us killed, and
now you're trying to sow these seeds of doubt.
Yeah, so it's like, obviously I don't think you look at her as an idiot, because you understand that she's actually trying to do something good. She's trying to warn them because she cares about them.
A lot of them are going to die. Yeah. And I think it was like 3 or 5 years from now.
I want to say it was 3 years, because I think, I'm sure it sounded like 3 years later, but the way they were talking about it. But you see the quick flashback as well at the end, where it's her and her husband at the the memorial, right, where there's the stones with it says Clan Mackenzie, and it's kind of this thing. Oh, little did she know she was going to be hanging out, with that clan in a short time. But I thought the way it kind of bounced the tones in there was really good. And then the other side of kind of the arc of the episode is that she's feeling left out. They're cracking all these jokes. She feels separate. She's always sitting off on her own. She fights at one point with Angus. Well, more than once, really. But she fights when she says, I'm not going to sit with thieves, because this is right after they've taken the chickens from the family who were being extorted. And Angus gets really pissed about it, pulls out his knife. Jamie diffuses it, but it's quite tense for a moment, and she couldn't feel further apart from them in terms of like a social group. But you get the payoff to this, which I do think was a little bit predictable. I could see it coming. Like I could see it's after all this has went down towards the end of the episode, and she's sitting with Ned, and the others are all on a little table in this tavern, and these other guys are speaking in Gaelic, and they say things a few times because some of the others keep looking around at them, and then eventually, and I think what's really pointed about this actually is that it's Angus who gets up first. Angus is the one who gets up and throws the first hit, which is notable because he's the one who's been at the most odds with her. So you could see it coming, but the revelation is that they started the fight because they insulted Claire, and she's kind of taken up because she's grilling, like, "Oh, you idiots, get into a fight! Like I have to keep patching you guys up, blah blah blah." But she shuts up as soon as they say, "Oh, they were defending your honor. They called you a whore," and she's like, "Wait, what? But you guys call me a whore.
Only we get to do that.
You guys call me a whore all the time. What?"
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you have kind of this weird brother-sister kind of dynamic that's formed with them. And it's returned when they go outside, and she cracks a joke. It's Rupert who's talking about being with two women and how they were getting jealous of each other, and she says, "Oh, I believe your right hand gets jealous of your left hand." And there's like a moment of pause, and they all start laughing. And then the other line that made me laugh is she goes, "I've never heard a woman crack a joke."
Yeah,
that made me laugh.
Yeah, that was quite good. It's the pause as well, where it takes like a good 20 seconds for him to register that, hey, that was funny.
So, obviously, naturally, it's like, oh, she's starting to joke with them. She's kind of one of the group, maybe. Which is an interesting thing to put all that in front of, is right before the cliffhanger, which is the English guy, the English soldier, shows back up with a whole troop and says, Dougal's there on his own, surrounded by redcoats. And he says, "Are you here by choice? Are you with him by choice?" And, that's where we cut to credits, because it's like she's going to have to make an active choice to not turn them in and sort of side with them effectively now.
Yeah, because this is the point where she has an out, right? Quite easily. Obviously, we've seen that this group are, not bad in a fight, but there are quite a lot of English here. They're presumably
better
fully armed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would, at this point in this scenario, you'd probably put the money on the English, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the fight that her husband describes, is that the English had guns and cannons and the Scotsmen had broadswords. Like, they didn't have a chance.
Exactly. Yeah, and obviously the Scots put up a lot of fight when they're using like guerrilla tactics, but this is, they're surrounded. They don't really have much chance in this scenario.
Aye. It's kind of like Vietnam, but except the bad guys won.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. Yeah. But the point is, this is the chance where she can get out now, and I think we're obviously going to say, well, she's not gonna. She's going to say, yeah, of course she's here by choice.
Which, in theory, should make them trust her more and make them more bonded to her.
Yeah.
Or at least Dougal, anyway.
Or it's like, oh, you're really playing the long game.
Oh, yeah, possibly. But I would like to hope that Dougal, at the very least, will see what she says here and maybe, like, I think they're doing a good job with Dougal with, like, sort of like, oh, is he a bit more villainous? Should we not like him? And then it's like, oh, no, there's, like, a good reason for this part, or there's a good, noble reason for that thing. Like, it's been playing fast and loose with him a little bit.
It has. And it makes this an interesting choice for Claire, because even if she'll want to say that she's not here by choice, she'll want her freedom, we know that. But she also knows if she says that, they're all dead. And she obviously doesn't want them all dead. Yeah,
she's proven that to us throughout the episode by trying to save them. And on top of that, yeah, she'll be free from them, but like then this English army are probably going to take her somewhere. Like, and that's not really good for her either.
Maybe back to England.
Yeah. So it's not really like, but I think it's a good moment in the sense that this is her finally making a choice to side with the Clan Mackenzie. It's the first time she's had like real agency in making that choice. And Dougal shows her a little bit, and partly it's because he wants to come and talk to her in private, but he does say, let her go and wash on her own, like, don't, she doesn't need the bodyguard, which at least is a teensy bit of trust that she won't just immediately run off in the first second,
as opposed to the start of the episode where they're chasing all over the village looking for her.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like little arcs in this episode that all kind of link together. You've got her opinion of Dougal and revealing on a larger scope what Dougal and this potential rebellion is up to, which is exciting for the future story wise. But then also just this idea of her bonding with the group and bonding with them and actually feeling like she in some way belongs with them to some extent. So, as much as she's obviously still thinking about going home, I'm not saying we're at a point where she'll choose to stay because she's like, so included here now that she doesn't want to go back to her own time period. But this idea that she's going to choose them will be kind of a first step in like, okay, she's actually going to start to feel like they can trust her in some way. So good character beats. I would definitely argue. I think in this episode. Definitely. There's obviously a lot of other little things. After the last time Dougal makes his speech and gets the money, they're staying at like a tavern or maybe like a bed and breakfast or whatever. And Jamie tries to sleep outside of her door. And at first she's like nervous because she hears a noise, but it's like, oh wait, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just sleeping out here because there's a lot of drunk men downstairs and I thought I'd like stand guard. And so obviously it becomes quite sweet quite quickly. And she's like, look, it's freezing out here. I've got a fire. Why don't you come in here? And he's actually kind of adorable the way he just kind of goes, I can get a room with you. Oh, can you do that? It's like, and why not? Your reputation would be just destroyed.
But he accepts the blankets.
He accepts the blankets because that's not scandalous. And she makes a great point. She's like, but I've slept outside with you and like 10 other men, like
every night. Yeah.
Some walls changes that, and he's like, oh, it's completely different, right? And that's the part that's kind of adorable because it's kind of this weird naive thing where he sees that as different, but it's not really. Like it's.
I don't know. I can see the argument from his point of view as there's a difference between they're all there as part of the group. Yes, she's with them, but they're all.
Oh yeah, that part's different. No. But I don't think the walls makes it different. Like I think if all 10 of them came in the room and all slept on the floor, it would be the exact same.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. But obviously the way he's looking at it is, oh, a man and a woman alone in the room together, they must be up to something.
Yeah.
That's the attitude. Which some people still think like that today, which is silly, but yeah, but he takes the blanket. So yeah, it's like there's not a lot of like Jamie Claire romance stuff this episode, but this is definitely a moment of trust and kind of sweetness. So you've got that in there. I thought it was also interesting. We get to know a few more of these characters a bit better. I mean, they've all been around, pretty much, but the fact that I'm bothering to like check Rupert's name or Murtaugh's name or even the younger guy Willie, like they all had a little bit more in this episode because there's not all these other characters around constantly.
Yeah, and it was really trying to kind of show us that group camaraderie that they have on the road together, like by showing us some more of these smaller characters a bit more.
Aye. And it's strange how schoolyard humor's not changed that much, because at one point when Dougal's telling a story and he starts like humping one of their shoulders to like make his point, I'm like, I've definitely seen people do that in school when they're talking about something dirty.
Yeah, and I believe that it's not changed that much as well.
I believe this has been universal for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, notable Scottish phrases in this that I can confirm are still in use. At one point, Jamie refers to Angus as a clatty bastard. That is still used to this day. Mm-hmm. Do you hear that much in England? Is that something?
No, I've heard it from a few. Cause I've known a considerable amount of Scottish people over the years.
Oh,
so I've heard it.
How lucky you are!
I know. Thrilling.
It's not something I particularly say often, but it stuck out to me as like every so often the shows that had like a phrase or a line, I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I actually hear. Like that's something that is still around. Now who knows if they even existed back then, but it certainly makes it feel more Scottish than the here and now anyway.
To be fair, I often feel that way about a lot of shows set in somewhere specific in England as well, like as opposed to just being London or just generic. Oh, it's an English show, because a lot of places in England have their own very specific slang. Like when I moved to where I am now, 2 hours away from where I used to live. Even now, I've lived here for probably almost a decade, and there are still like I don't go a month without someone saying something where I'm like, sorry, what was that? And they're like, yeah, that's a normal thing to say. Yeah,
I can literally go on a 30-minute train ride to a different part of Scotland, and I will there'll be like food items that have different names than what I'm used to, and it's just the way it is. Like every location is just so distinct in a lot of the dialect. But so I definitely, because of the area that I've grown up around and where I know, like I would argue a lot of these phrases, if they're specific to an area, it would be Glaswegian, because that's kind of what I know and it's what I'm recognizing. But it's entirely possible some other phrases in here that are taken from other parts of Scotland that I'm just not noticing, I'm not recognizing them and going, oh, that's something I've heard.
Yeah, because it's someone else has known that and you just don't know it.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's kind of weird how little you have to travel to get completely different things in this country that are just like completely outside your knowledge.
It's very easy. Yeah, I don't have much to add to it.
Yeah, sometimes I'll see that in shows set in a specific place in England that'll use specific language set in that place, and I appreciate that as well. It means they've probably got some sort of local consultant at the very least.
Someone to just sort of just veer the dialect in the right direction, or maybe avoid phrases that would never be said there, kind of thing. Yeah.
And I assume, obviously, we've obviously established there's a lot of Scottish actors on this.
Mm-hmm.
There's presumably enough of them that they can contribute to phrases like that, where they can kind of go, hey, this is something authentic that we can say.
That's true. It wouldn't surprise me if there's lines in the script that maybe the actors recommend, hey, should I change this slightly to this, because this is what they would actually say, or at least now
I wouldn't be surprised if they'll just put at some point like generic Scottish insult in like in parentheses as in the script, and just ask, hey, what would you say here? What would people that what would they say? Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because sometimes I forget that when scripts are written, sometimes not every single word is actually in the script, and not just obviously ad-libbing is a thing, and they'll let them try with their own dialogue sometimes. But I mean more specifically, there'll be moments in the script, and I remember this from an old UK show, Only Fools and Horses. Someone telling a story about how a part of the script said, oh, the character stands up and just starts ranting. The idea being that he would just start shouting constantly until someone else says another line. Because it was like, oh, well, it'd be too much effort to actually script every word out. Is to just let the actor sort of do what feels natural in the moment. But it's like a really funny part of that episode where he goes up and just starts ranting for like 30 seconds about every stupid thing. And I almost was like a cheat to me. I'm like, oh, that lazy writer. The lazy writer didn't actually put all the words in.
Yeah.
He just put, just rants for 30 seconds.
Yeah. But there's having some faith in your actors. And I think, especially when it comes to something like this, I'm assuming that there might be some Scottish writers. There may be consultants, again, to kind of get things accurate.
At the very least, I imagine there's history consultants.
Almost certainly, especially on a show of this budget. But again, when you've got local actors like that, you would use that knowledge. You would not, why pay someone else entirely to do all these things where you can just be like, hey, what would you say? And you get that local experience from that.
It's true. There's definitely moments. There's a moment when they're first collecting at the first town where, Dougal's not being this stern prick. He's actually sort of like chatting casually to some of the people coming up as they're paying their rent.
Because this is somewhere he comes presumably every year.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this, how's the kids doing?
And he does this thing where he's making a joke about how this guy's got a son who's like 2 foot tall. And he's like, some big guy snuck into your wife's bedroom and you were out or something like that. And the guy like snaps back with a quick little line of his own, and Dougal just sort of grabs his shoulder and goes, "Oh, did she?" Yeah, and it felt so natural in a way that normally when I see a Scottish character in something, it's not necessarily clear that someone who's not Scottish wrote it, but like just they tend to not go into those little things, those little like.
It either feels stereotypical or it doesn't feel authentic.
I wouldn't even say unauthentic, because I'm not someone who uses slang. So if anything, I would say they're just kind of like me. In which case, they've got a Scottish accent, but they don't really do anything that's super Scottish. But there's little moments in this occasionally, which probably comes from the fact that, the actor who plays Dougal is, I think, from Glasgow specifically. So it sounded very Glaswegian the way he did it. That's just this one particular moment. So there's lots of these little authentic bits to the delivery, which you only get because they've decided to shoot it in Scotland and actually get a bunch of Scottish actors to actually say it.
It definitely helps, yeah.
So, and admittedly, obviously being Scottish, I'm picking up on a lot of this and noticing it. Does it matter for the rest of the world? you get away without it, but it does give it a level of authenticity, which at least makes it feel unique versus other shows that are set in the past. You know, it stops you from feeling like, you know, they make comparison.
I think it's one of those things where even if you're not consciously aware of, you know, why that sounds right, I think it probably translates anyway, just on a subconscious level, like to, you know, like people would recognize it feels natural because it is.
Yeah, this reminds me actually when just to reference a comic book here, there was a Scottish character in a comic book written by Tim Seeley a while back.
Oh God, I know how this goes.
Yeah, and he put in a line saying "pure damn brilliant," and I tweeted at him saying, "Oh, nice try, but it's pure dead brilliant," only to discover that he had actually researched this properly, put in the right phrase "pure dead brilliant," but the editor of the comic thought it was wrong. It changed it. The beauty of this show is that the actors being Scottish will recognise what's right. and not editorialize their lines in the wrong way. So that's nice.
Yeah.
If someone puts in like, you know, oh, it's kind of close, like they've done a bit of research, but they've not quite got it right.
Like it'll be close enough that the actors will know what they're getting at and just fix it to, because if they said it wrong, they'd know it was wrong and it would feel wrong.
Oh yeah, it would come out wrong. So I appreciate that, those little things. So no, cool. It's another thing actually, because we're mentioning like him being friendly with everyone. There's a good change in tone, I guess. There's a lot of nice comparisons in this episode of like two versions of the same thing. Later on, when I go to the village, it's been pillaged by the English like 2 days before, and it's a very different tone where everyone's really quiet and Dougal's just watching as they're you know, handing in what they can, but everything's a bit short, everything's a bit under, and there's this one guy who can't feed his family, and obviously it's showing us he's a good guy. Dougal to some extent because he is willing to give some of the food back to like, hey, you know, feed your family.
Circumstances.
Yeah, and obviously there's a cynical look at it at the time, but then, you know, once we have the full context, it's like, well, you know,
presumably all these people have just been radicalized.
possibly. You know, it's so funny because like obviously we see them perhaps as the more heroic characters in the show because they're the ones that we're following. And let's face it, the English in this time period are very villainous and easy to hate. I can't necessarily have a strong opinion on this war they want to fight or like their goals necessarily, because I'm not someone who really like knows what any of these kings at the time stood for, and I certainly, as an atheist, don't give a shit about the proper Christian king or any of that shit. So that's all a bit alien to me, but that's okay. I'm just sort of viewing it through the lens that Claire is, which is like these are just people and a part of history, and I'm getting attached to them, and I don't want them to die, so therefore I care about what they're going to do, and that's okay.
Yes, and that's how the vast majority of the people ever watching this show will experience it. So it's important that that's how it lands.
Absolutely. So I think this episode lands in the way it's supposed to, and it does a good bit of character work for everyone involved. And you know, even Angus, who's a pretty unlikable little shithead most of the time, has a couple of nice moments towards the end.
He is. Like I said, my biggest problem is kind of Claire. Can I not kind of twigging on fast enough? It felt like it was. Maybe she should have put things together a bit earlier. Not just I picked up that random Gaelic phrase, but instead the scars, the story, the context of that didn't strike her as strange. I don't know. That just felt a little bit off to me. Other than that, I do think everything else in the episode's pretty good.
I think I'm happy enough with the idea that she's maybe like making a mistake and like her bias is in the way, and that's why she doesn't.
Like I say, I'll go with that.
Yeah. I think that works because it's when she hears, I think it's like the name as well. She hears the king's name. I think
with the Stuarts.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, wait a minute," and that's when it triggers the memory of everything. But no, so yeah, another solid episode. I mean, we're 5 in now. We said we'd do at least 8. I'm feeling quite confident at this point that we're going to do the rest of the season.
It would kind of have to be pretty, dire in these last couple. It would have to realize spin its wheels and nothing happened for 3 episodes. I think at this point.
It'd have to shit the bed. And yeah, to its credit, I don't think that any episode has... And I think the last 3 have especially been quite strong at all having like a full kind of like thematic idea that the episode's been about. The first one obviously is the start. 2 is maybe the only one because it's just sort of it's episode 2 syndrome basically. So
yeah, which I think 2 probably was the weakest episode, but also that's not surprising. We see that all the time.
We definitely do. So Yeah, let us know what you thought of this episode of Outlander in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the content, you can do that by hitting the super thanks button below the video or on a monthly basis over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv and help keep all the reviews of everything coming, both here and over on Mailfuzz Movies, which is the movie podcast channel. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got... Oh no, wait a minute. I have a special outro for this.
God damn it.
I have a special outro.
I thought I'd escaped.
So, if one should become possessed by watching too much TV, do not despair, because... Bada bing! Will compel the demon to leave your body, because Christ compels you. Yes.